We are out here today with this '02 Silverado Duramax Allison combination, heavily modified truck. With that said, in this case, diagnostics for the fuel system and how the engine runs is the same on a stock truck. And the owner's telling me he's hazing out the rear tailpipes at idle. And he's leaking oil under boot. Let's just see how it looks. We'll check the oil level. Like, there's a good bit of oil around the valve cover, all at the lower edge. I wiped a little bit up of it already, but that's where a lot of the leak was coming from. It's not underneath, so I don't think it's the head gasket. You can see oil collecting right here on this manifold bolt to drip down, and there's still a good bit. Obviously oil should not be right there, so it's not. Let's check the oil and the coolant. Coolant level's normal, as you can see. That's fine. It's clear. And let's check the dipstick. Oh, here's definitely an issue. As you can see, guys, look at how high up that. It's all the way, literally all the way up to here. About, look at that. That's wet with oil. He's either overfilled it or he's making oil. Most likely he's got some kind of an injector issue. The fact that it's hazing and the fact that he's got a ridiculous amount of oil in there, and it's very thin oil, is that it's pretty safe to assume that there's an injector. We can check it on a scan gauge. I already did. I'm not going to do it again just because I don't want to hurt the truck more than I have to, or run the truck more than I have to. I'm actually just going to pull it in the garage here. Cylinder 7 had a lower pulse width than everything else, and cylinder 7 had the only one that was remotely close to being out of spec as a balance rate. It was like 3.6 or 3.7, and everything else was below 3.0. So he said he had the injectors done right before he bought the truck, so within the last 2 years, and he took it on trade, so he doesn't really know what's going on with it. But I think I'm going to yank these passenger side injectors right here. Number 7 for sure needs tested and checked, and the whole bank's open, so I think he's going to get them all tested. I don't know how much money he wants to spend, and I really, based on how much power this truck makes, unfortunately it's not the cheaper stock injectors. This truck has to be at least 600 horsepower. So I don't know if they're 65s, 100s, 150s, I don't know, but it's a big single built trans truck, so you know they're not stock. I think if he gets more than 2, if he tests more than two or more that are bad on this passenger bank, I'm going to recommend just to replace all 8, since he doesn't know this truck well enough yet, since he didn't do it last time. And honestly, when you replace just 1 or 2 that are bad, you don't know when the other ones will fail either. And plus, not to mention, this is a huge pain. It's the reason why it costs so much to have a shop do it, because it's not an enjoyable time. It's not super difficult per se, but there's just, as you can see, there's just a lot to get to finally get those orange valve covers off. And this is the easy side. That's a little bit more of a pain in the butt, especially that back right corner. So right now I'm going to get this off. I'm going to pull the air intake system out. I'm going to pull this tube out right here, and then I think I need to start disconnecting the wiring. He doesn't have this factory fuel filter. He ran his air dog all the way from the back straight to the pump. So that should save us a little bit of time just not having to play with that. You should only get an LB7 if you're willing to work on stuff yourself, because this is a high labor intensive engine. when things break. It's a good engine as long as things aren't broken. But sometimes things break, and then you have to decide, all right, do I shell out a couple grand every time, $1,000 every time or so, or do I let someone else do it? And that's what you got to figure out. Me personally, I wouldn't own an LB7 if I didn't work on this stuff myself, because it's just an expensive truck. It's always recommended to get new with the hard lines when you're doing this with a new injector, or have them cleaned, or have the injectors tested. Like I said, everything adds up. I probably just mentioned $500 worth of stuff right there, and we haven't even replaced an injector yet, or paid me. So, I'm just saying, honestly, the only thing that's wrong with the LB7 is the fuel system. Like, really, there's no other common issues with this truck. If your fuel system's good, most likely the rest of the truck's good. For those guys like this one who like four-wheel drive, big horsepower, sometimes you need front end help, but not everybody wants to race. Okay, so I just removed the harness. I got it up, flipped over. I threw the AC back. I got the fickum off, which really was two hoses. One here, and fickum was here and here. And then the 3 bolts, and then that just came out. I got to remove this bracket. Should be 1, 2, 3, and then 1 down here for the oil dipstick. This bracket will come off. Upper valve covers off. Definitely be very careful with your 11 5mm bolts. Definitely make sure your tool is you know, nice and square before you turn on them, because of the goop in the upper valve cover. See that? They will stick much harder than the factory torque spec feels like. I don't look at the specs before I reassemble this, but I think it's around 18 foot-pounds or something. That's all it is, but it's because of the goop. It feels much stronger than that. But because of that, it does take a little bit of force to get out. And definitely make sure you're going to have to clean all this up well. And this is why they always say change the oil every time you do this, because all this junk's going to fall in. And honestly, look at those injectors. They look clean. With that said, we got to test them all since this is open anyway. So right now I'm going to pull these two and set them aside. I think they're 8 or 7 or something. Very light torque. Don't crank on these too bad. 1, 2, 3, 4 times 2, or times 2 different sets, and pull those off. Then you will get to more of the lower valve covers. I think the lower valve cover is a little bit easier than the top valve cover, at least in the back corner ones, because you have a little bit more clearance. You don't want to strip any bolts. They're the same size, 5mm, so just take your time and get it done. Alright, I just want to point this out. All these little bolts are 5mm Allens, and if you don't have the Merchant Auto, I believe they're Merchant Auto, like the upgraded real thick head ones, very easy to strip these. Definitely make sure the first time you turn these, they're in there, and you're pushing with your hand to hold it in, and then use your other hand to turn the ratchet. Definitely, if you can help it, don't stick these in there and try to hit your ratchet with a hammer. You'll probably strip it, which is what I just did on one of them. But my solution was to get a vice grip around it, and that's how I was able to get it loose. See how loose that is now? So I should be able to, if I can't get that out by hand, I should be able to get my 5mm in there just enough to get it out. Yep, just enough it'll turn. So once these are out, once all these are out, these are your injector returns. Pretty long bolts. See, there's a hole. But get these out and then we'll do the injector removal next. Alright, I broke everything loose. Once again, be very careful when breaking. They are torqued, if done properly, 37 foot-pounds, so these do take some good force. Put it by all my bolts. Here. I've only done the injectors a couple times, and every time breaking this stuff loose is kind of a little nerve-wracking, because in case you strip it like I did earlier, and I was like, oh man, because if it don't come out, that's a problem. It'll stop you in your tracks no matter what you're doing, because you can't get around one of these bolts. Or I'm going to have these all 4 get tested because I'm here. Why not? See how good they are once they come back from getting tested. And like I said, I want to replace, I'll keep these. I'm going to replace these 4. I'll keep this one. I'm going to replace these 4 and these 4. The injector hold down is loose on all of them. So now the injector just needs pulled up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go grab my handy dandy, my new tool, Merchant Auto Deluxe Injector Removal Tool. I wish I had this last time I did this, but I did not, and I used a combination of this thing and really I used the other end of the line. I put the line back on. Screwed it back on. I kind of wiggled it until it came out. Definitely not recommended, especially if you're planning to reuse this stuff, which I wasn't at the time, so I didn't care. But with these, I'm expecting probably at least 2 to come back good. So I bought the proper tool, and it's okay. This first time doing it for someone else will pay for the tool. So I don't need this right now. What I do need is these. You see a picture? Alright, I didn't show this, but I already removed these. You're definitely going to need to get your cups out some kind of tool like this. You know, that has the thing that you put into the cup. You slide this over, and then, you know, this washer goes on top like this, and then you just screw that nut and it pulls everything up, and then you slide this out and then your cup's out. So I'm only doing one side so far, because I'm going to get one side complete and then today and come back to the other side tomorrow. But now that these are off, you need to clean your cups. Grab some type of cleaner. I guess today's cleaner of choice is going to be this right here, and really I'm just going to get down in there as best I can. That should be fairly easy with like a straight pick and a rag on the tip or a towel on the tip. I should be able to get most of that. And then take, see right here on this surface, you want that as clean as possible so it takes your red Loctite that you have and it bonds as best it can to the head. Let's see, I'm going to use something like this, a very light scuffing pad, just to get it as best I can cleaned up around here. Inside doesn't matter quite as much because that's where the injector tip goes. Out here, anytime you pull these, you're going to have to get new injectors. And this kit's from Lincoln Diesel. Those red ones are for the cups. And then you'll need some very specific red Loctite for these as well. I clean them. Take you know, something soft because you're not digging into metal. And that's better. Or you are digging into metal, but it's aluminum, so it's relatively soft metal. And let's see, if you look down here, here's what I used. If you can fit a whole drill, really hard to kind of fit a drill. You can see down in there super easily, but that's about as clean as I could get it. And they all look, that one's actually got some gunk in it, but it's on the very edge. It looks like it's in a part where the cup's not going to be sealing, so And those, I don't even know how people even look into those last two. Cylinder 7 and 8 are just, throw your, either one of your two cleaners down here. It's definitely be easiest if it was on a drill. But for me, I'm just going like this, you know, going in and out, turning it a little bit. And obviously even just doing this, there's still a little gunk in there around the edge, but because it's around the edge, I don't matter as much. I just need the sealing surface around the center so that I get a complete seal all the way around, because it's only going to be from like there to there, that seal. Clean up all these on the inside, and then first up, and then we'll get our rings on with a little bit of oil, a little bit of lube, or some kind of old lube. I'm just going to use some oil, motor oil, and then we'll put our red Loctite on right here, slap it in the head, tap it down, and we get our injectors in right away. Remember, that cures in 24 hours, so you don't want to, you want it to cure around how the injector is going to sit, right? So get it in, get the valve cover on, or get it in, get the injector in, return line in, get the valve covers on, get the high pressure line on. Alright, then at that point you can take a break and let it sit overnight or a week or whatever. Because at that point you're not touching the injectors again, or you can't wiggle that new bond that just formed. And at least that's my logic, my train of thought, that once all the moving parts that could wiggle it free are on, it's good. Definitely do it like that, in my opinion. Worked on that truck, or my other truck that's outside. Haven't had any problems with that one in 35,000 miles since I did that one, and I did that the same way. So, alright, so I just did this one. As you can see in there, it's pretty clean. Maybe not perfect just because it's not new, but it's definitely usable. And on here, also, it's not new. Do as best you can, but that looks pretty good to me. So this one, all this one needs is some red rings, some Loctite, and it can be shoved or put back in the head. Alright, now I got 4 cleaned up and ready to go. I got my copper washers, my red rings, and how I'm gonna get these on. I'm gonna put some oil around here, slide these on, and then oil the outside of these too to make sure they slide in the head good. You can drop these in now or later, really doesn't matter. Then you take a big socket, a 6, don't really matter what size, as long as it's just a hair wider, like this right here, just a hair wider. You want something all the way around the edge and a little bit further, so when it hits the head, it makes it flush. And so I'm going to hit a hammer or something on this to tap it down into the head, and then these will be seated. Yeah. Okay. With this being as dry as possible. Alright, looks like one of these per 4. Make sure this, right where the crease is where I'm going to focus on. Make sure that surface is very clean. I like doing it here because it's going to drip down. Has got some lubricant on here, and the red dye or red Loctite is on this. So let's push this in. Definitely don't want to accidentally touch any of that red Loctite on anything else other than where it's intended to go. Alright, so you can't shove it in there by hand. It does need just a little bit of help from a bump. So we're going to, because this one's out in the open, see how that's sealed up nice, flush with the edge? So that one's in there ready to go. I just demoed that one, do them all like that, and then you're ready for injector. Alright, these are the hold down bolts for the injectors right here. In my personal opinion, always replace them. They're very expensive part, or inexpensive part, and this is a time when a lot of work's having to be done if these ever get loose. So I thought I heard they were one-time use. Maybe the internet can confirm that, but if not, I mean, a bolt's a bolt. There ain't much money. If nothing else, you've got a brand new surface that you haven't, potentially stripped any part of that or not, because it is 37 foot-pounds. These are tightened fairly tight. So like this one right here, see how that one, the surfaces alone, you should replace them just so that the next time when you take them out, they're new. My recommendation on all those Allen head bolts, replace everything. Looks like I can reuse 2, or replace them if you can. If you can't, I don't think it's the end of the world. I think if you need to get your truck back up and running right away, should be fine. However, if you have the time, if you have the money, just get new ones. It'll make your peace of mind, for an extra 15 bucks or whatever it is. The factory return bolts are usable, but just plan on getting 8 new ones every time, solely for the condition of the hex head up, or the Allen bolt up top. This one doesn't look too bad when I pulled it out. It might have been an easier location one to get out. This one I tore up a little bit, and as you see on the side, I had to use a vice grip to get it out. So no matter what, I would replace these if they're stock, with stock 8 bolts. But if you want to replace them only one time, spend the extra money and get a proper, I think this is Lincoln Diesel calls these like the heavy duty return line bolts. But basically all they do is go from a Allen top to a hex top, just like the this is the return line bolt that bolts to the block. It's already one. Why they didn't make them all like that, I don't know. So they only send you the 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then this one was already like that, so it's good to go. Do it right the first time, take your time. It's not worth the extra time to do it again. Alright, this is where I'm sitting right now. I got the lower valve cover back on. That's pretty self-explanatory. You use just the black gasket that comes in the kit. Make sure it's flush and bolted on. I believe the torque spec, you follow the torque spec. And I'm about to the top. Before you do the top, you got to put the injector harnesses back in. Those have a torque spec too, so find those on the internet. And then I'm going to put the top gasket has a sealant on it instead of a rubber gasket, and this is aluminum MAL JV8 aluminum silicone sealant. So I'm going to put a nice bead of that, set it down. I'm going to set it on the valve cover and put my upper valve cover bolts in, and after that I can connect that part of the fuel system by once that's on, I can stick the hard or high pressure lines on, and we should be good to go from there. Or pretty darn close with reassembly on the passenger side once this cover's back on, because cover's on, the lines will go from here. The lines will go from here, to here, and then once that's on, after that it's just making all the random connections that are still on this side. Putting on the high pressure lines now. Definitely, I'd always recommend getting this one hand tight, or at least threaded on, and then get this one on. The reason for that is that if these are leaking, you can see it. If these are leaking, you can't. So I always make sure, like this one, pull it back, you know, stick it, get it threaded on a thing, or on the, and you know it's threaded because you can pull it. So as long as this starts threading on, so get this one threaded on first, then you can line up this one and throw it on. Sometimes they're not perfectly straight, which again, it's more important to be able to see if it's not straight that you're getting this one on versus this one, because you, like I said before, you cannot physically see the connections on those. I just put the Fickum back on. Make sure you got your 2 hoses. I gotta tighten up these clamps. Now I'm not going to put on this hose, the coolant stuff yet, because I still have to get that on, and I even still might have to move this off a little bit to slide it on there. Because once I put this on here, this crossover hose, I don't know what this is called, the breather or something. This one right here, but I trashed this little hose and this connector getting it off because it's in such a tough spot. I need to get a new one of those, then I can put that on, and then I can put this coolant hose that runs back there and then start moving the wiring harness back together and basically finishing this side. After that, we got to go to the other side, and this is the side that's more difficult in general. I think it's mainly because this booster's here, and that's where your hands typically would go on the other side. Because on the other side everything cuts off like right here, but on this side, so that just makes it, you know, harder to get to once that's in the way. But also there's the steering shaft, and like this side's still bare, as you can see right there, and as you can see in the back corner, it's just a pain. And no one goes into an LB7 and is like, oh yeah, Injector's great, I just love my job. I don't think they mind the money they get from doing it, but nobody's like, oh, this is fun. Oh, I'll take that back. Maybe there's that one guy. But on your easier side. So sometimes if you suspect 1 or 2 bad injectors and they're all in the passenger bank, it might not be a bad idea just to do the whole bank and start it and run it and see if that fixes it, because then the other side is much harder. There's more risk for stripping a bolt on the other side. Let's put it that way. So I've used Merchant Auto's their app on their phone to get the torque specs. I don't know, 4 or 5 hours of straight work, and this truck should be back together and running. So we shall see. Alright, got it all back together, as you can see. I just need the 1 boost tube, passenger side, which I'm going to leave off until we start it, and then the fender liners. Now these are the sucky batteries where they don't have the top posts, because sometimes these little thin terminals aren't so great for jumping. So I'm trying to charge it up here with this Beetle, because the jump box was not enough. I don't know if it was enough or if it just wasn't making good contact because the little rings are so small. But I'm trying to give it some juice before we start cranking it again. I want to say it's 2,500 PSI on the rails for it to even start. So like I said, if this Jetta can't get it done, we're gonna have to get some new batteries, and I guess that's that. So alright boys, I just got it started. Took a little bit of cranking. As you can see, his lift pump is putting out, I don't know, 8 to 10 PSI. And then I don't see any outward leaks, seeing any obvious outward leaks at the moment. I'm gonna consider this injector reinstall complete. So thanks for watching.